The crew of the Coast Guard Cutter Stratton, we're making a difference. But we can't do it alone. We're not going to be able to do it with the resources we have right now. We've tripled our removal rates, but there's still a lot more work to be done. I'm indebted to this crew, to the cooperation across the interagency, to our elected leaders, and to our Attorney General, who took time out of their busy schedules to be here with you this morning. I look forward to your questions, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Hey, thanks, Commandant. I'm Congressman Duncan Hunter. My district starts about 30 miles inland. First, here's what the Coast Guard does. They're not just the places that Admiral Zukunft mentioned. They're also in the Persian Gulf. They're in the Arctic. They're in Alaska. They're here in San Diego. They are the first line of defense against not just transnational terrorism and drug interdiction, but also against folks that would like to come into this country illegally and bring things like nuclear weapons with them. The Coast Guard is the first line of defense. The border fence here is the last line of defense, and we want to stop the bad guys before they get here. That's defense in depth. And anybody that knows any military lingo at all knows that you start out far, and your last line of defense is just south of us here. But the Coast Guards, they're the ones that are out there alone and unafraid on the front lines every day. Number two, you see how flexible the Coast Guard is. The entire Coast Guard budget of $10 billion roughly is one Defense Department contract for their health records to work with DOD and the VA. The entire Coast Guard budget, with their fleet of ships operating everywhere that they operate around the world doing what they do, their entire budget is one contract in the Department of Defense. It's not enough, and they need more, because we as Americans are asking too much of them with as little as they had to do what they do, but they still get it done. That's what the Coast Guard does. And I'm here with someone else today who gets the job done. He's a great senator. He was in the Army. We won't hold that against him here today, but in this Navy Marine Corps town. But so was Mr. Issa. Congressman Issa was in the Army too. But I'm not outnumbered, because there's more Coast Guards behind me than there are soldiers. But a great man who is famous not just in Alabama but around the country for famously donning the "Make America Great Again" hat, and that's what he's doing. I would like to present to you our #1 law enforcement officer and the great Attorney General of these United States of America, Jeff Sessions.
Well, thank you very much. And Admiral Zukunft, congratulations to you and the crew of this vessel and the tremendous work you're doing. I got a briefing shortly after becoming Attorney General, and it became very clear to me that the single most vulnerable part of the entire drug network may be their weakness at sea. So much of their drugs were coming in that direction, and we aren't able to interdict sufficiently those ships that we knew existed. So the Coast Guard has now tripled their effectiveness in those months already, and this revelation today, this incredibly large seizures, makes, I think, validates that. We need to help them to be even more effective. I see Mark Conover here from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They prosecute these cases. Venue in these cases is the first place you bring this shipload of drugs to, and the defendants, they bring them into this district, and they're prosecuted here and other districts in California and on the Gulf Coast. Look, we are facing a tremendous challenge. In 2015, we had 52,000 people die from drug overdoses in this country, numbers the likes of which we've never, ever seen before. I've been involved in drug prosecutions since the 1970s as a young prosecutor. We never have seen these kind of deaths before. The preliminary numbers for 2016 look like it will be well over 60,000 deaths. We are facing a challenge in this country with drug abuse, addiction that we've never seen before. There are three things that we measure our effectiveness against when we consider how effective we are in preventing drugs availability. One is availability. Drugs are more available now than in many years. Another one is price. drugs are cheaper now than we've seen in many, many years, and the purity of the drugs. We're seeing purity at levels we've never seen before in the country. Heroin and cocaine purity levels are extraordinarily high. So this is a very effective process that's ongoing. Coast Guard is leading. They're looking for ways every day to enhance their ability to interdict these ships. And they're making progress. As I've said, they've tripled that. We've got a great challenge in our country. The Department of Justice is resolutely committed to success. We work with the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, U.S. Marshals. We do so many things there. We work with our Homeland Security partners as they work on these issues, and the Coast Guard in particular. So thank you, men and women of the United States Coast Guard, the $600 million, $700 million seizures that you have here represent something extraordinary.
If you'd like to ask a question and introduce yourself and the agency that you represent, then direct your question to the specific spokesperson. The floor is open for questions. Yes, sir.
No announcements have been made on that. It's a very, very important district indeed. All the California districts are large and critically important, and all the United States attorneys are. We are resolutely committed in the Department of Justice. My deputy, Rod Rosenstein, served as United States Attorney 12 years. I served as a U.S. Attorney for 12 years. We want the very best we can get. They lead important offices that are critical to law enforcement. They also provide leadership to all the federal agencies and our state and local partners, and that's so critical. So we give it great, you can be sure that we're giving it great attention. I would also note that we're a little ahead of certainly the last presidential nominees for United States attorneys, and we're going to keep working to get that done as soon as possible. We will need help from the Senate because they have to confirm those nominations. Well, in the United States, anybody can sue, but the United States of America has a border. The United States government has the control of that border and a responsibility to secure it. We would expect to be fully successful in moving forward with a border wall as Congress gives us the money to do so. Well, we're doing in recent months, they've done a lot better job. We've been able to get more resources into the seaborne drug importations. We're stepping up enforcement on the border. We've got a lot more to do, but if we can continue to make the kind of progress we've seen, where we've seen nearly a 50% reduction in arrest on the border, that creates a virtuous cycle where we can give more attention to each individual case instead of having numbers so large it's difficult to respond. President Trump's leadership has been the single most dramatic factor in the reduction of illegal entries at our border. There's just no doubt about it. He sent a clear message, and we need to continue to send that message. If you want to come to America, make your application and come lawfully. And if you come unlawfully, we're going to apprehend you, we're going to deport you, and if you're bringing in drugs or illegal substances, you will be prosecuted. And if you get into the country unlawfully, and if you commit a drug offense or any other offense, and you get apprehended, you will be deported. And that's the right thing, because the American people are good and decent and absolutely correct. And they believe we should have a lawful system of immigration, one that serves the national interest and fairly adjudicates applications of entry to our country. And I would just note that we admit to permanent legal residents 1.1 million people every year to the United States. And we have hundreds of thousands of people here on work visas and educational visas in addition. So we're in a position, and we're going to work hard to support the President's agenda to create a lawful system of immigration, one that we can be proud of, one that serves the national interest. And in the process of that, we will reduce the flow of illegal drugs into the country.
Further to your question, the cooperation with Mexico and other countries has caused drug smugglers to try to skip and pass over countries that are, if you will, not cooperating. And so that's why the sea routes and the Coast Guard's mission has become so much more important. And if you can stay afterwards, I think what you'll see twofold. One, you'll see how far offshore, 1,000 miles or more, the smugglers are going to get into international waters to escape other countries, including Mexico. You'll also, I think, see that what's on board is not marijuana, it's cocaine and heroin, the drugs that are responsible for more loss of life than all car accidents in America combined. 60,000 people have died in disproportionate numbers from opiates. Thank you.
We have unprecedented successful cooperation with federal, state, and local agencies. I've observed it for my entire political and legal career and prosecuting career. One of the sad things is we have this disagreement over sanctuary cities and sanctuary states and the refusal of certain jurisdictions to cooperate with our colleagues, mostly our ICE agents, who have the responsibility under the law, the duty to arrest people who are in the country illegally, who commit, in addition to that, crimes against the United States of America. They are due to be deported, and I find it almost unbelievable that states and cities would object to that. Why in the world would they want to object to the law being followed, people who've come into the United States illegally and then commit additional crimes? Why they shouldn't be deported is beyond me. So I call on the cities and states to analyze what they're doing, the danger it's causing to their own communities, making our ICE officers have to hunt down people in neighborhoods that are far more risky when they could have picked them up at the jail after they've completed their sentence. So we need that cooperation. I'd urge our states to reconsider, and let's work together in an effective way.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for one more question. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm going to turn that over to the Commandant.
So last year, the Coast Guard set a new record. We apprehended over 200 metric tons of cocaine. We've already eclipsed that number. We're getting better at it, but we're also seeing an increase in cultivation, particularly in Colombia, and an increase in production. And most of the cocaine consumed here in the United States originates in Colombia. There's another segment to this as well. I've visited with all of the presidents in Central America, and they say that they are victims of geography. They live to the north of the largest cocaine producing country in the world, and they live to the south of the highest cocaine consumption country in the world, which is the United States. And so when these drugs pass through those countries, rule of law goes out the window. Mostly smugglers are extradited to the United States, where the prosecution rate is 100%, because in Honduras it's only 5%. It's almost a catch and release. But they bring violent crime. And when we saw in 2014 unprecedented numbers of unaccompanied minors arriving at our border, the first reaction of the Department of Homeland Security is, we need more detention facilities. My first reaction is, well, why did they leave in the first place? These young children are leaving because they are living in the most violent countries in the world. Honduras was more violent in 2014 than Iraq was at the height of the insurgency in 2005. Now, the irony behind this, you have parents that will put their children into the hands of a human smuggler, expend their life savings to get their child out of these crime-ridden countries and send them to the United States, where it all begins. Our drug consumption is causing that violence and regional instability in Central America. So what you see isn't just about the drugs that we're able to apprehend, but it's really about the regional stability of this part of the world. That I work very closely with the Department of Defense, with General Laurie Robinson at Northern Command and Admiral Kurt Tidd over at Southern Command, bringing all the resources that we can to bear against this problem set. But yes, we're going to need more boats. We're going to need more planes. We're going to need more partners. But we are making progress. Thank you very much.